What's up, guys? I thought I'd give my commentary on this $1.6 million pot featuring the man himself, Alan Keating, owning Nick Airball's soul. I know Doug and a couple others gave lots of comments on this already, but maybe you guys would like to hear my opinion as someone who they banned from playing on this game for being too good. I'd love to be able to play, but everyone's terrified, and yeah, I couldn't even play the 25K. I can at least commentate on the sidelines. I know a thing or two about some poker, so yeah, let's do some commentary. I wanted to add also to what other people have said. I think there's a few important details. Okay, so Airball opens the 6-5 suited in the low jack. Okay, early position. We got some 6-5 suited. I'm going to lower the volume a bit. Sometimes what people say does matter, whether they talk or not, by the way, guys. All right, so it's an amazing flop for Airball. I would say this is one of the best possible flops you could get. Yeah, I mean, it's like kind of like flopping a set, or it's similar quality, even though you don't have anything yet. That may be a useful way to think about it. Keating's got this ace-4 offsuit in the big spot, 8-4 offsuit in the big blind. Yeah, big monster hand that, if you're going to own someone's soul, you can play any cards, can't you? One thing that is important pre this hand, I think it may be important in this case for a few reasons, is that Keating was needling Airball and saying, oh, you never run any big bluffs, blah, blah, blah. And Airball is actually, I don't know if Airball's the kind of guy that's going to react perfectly rationally to all information given. So that can be a factor with some people, meaning that it may alter his play, it may not. Whereas if someone's a GTO Wizard or whatever, for example, and knows their ranges and plays them regardless of what people say or not, and it doesn't matter nearly as much. To find out what those ranges are, you can download GTO Wizard and ideally click my link and give me some money. I still like money, guys, as you guys do. So yeah, it's going to be a useful tool. Not so useful for analyzing this. Well, actually, it would be useful for analyzing this hand, matter of fact. Could take a look after the replayer. Yeah, I'll put it into GTO. I'll use some GTO Wizard for this. So Airball bets must bet a third pot here. He's supposed to bet 1/2 pot, but it's okay. You don't need to be perfect with the sizings. If you use 1/3 pot a lot, it's okay. Now Keating raises big, like fucking big. His check raise is about almost pot size. No, it's a little bit bigger than pot. It's a big check raise. It is a board that is going to get check raised a lot if you think about it. Well, not as much as one might expect. It's good for the big blind because there's more nut combinations than the in-position player has relative to... Well, they have more nut combos, but not that many because they usually have to be suited. But if you're Alan Keating and you're owning souls, you got those offsuit combinations in there too. So things might be a little different if you're Alan Keating. All right, so Keating's got the 2 pair. But yeah, he's got the best hand quite a lot here, even after the check raise. He's got the counterfeit pair. You could justify a bet. The machine probably won't bet here. We'll go over it after the hand in GTO Wizard land. But yeah, it's reasonable. We'll check what the EV is in comparison to checking. Probably the machine just checks like pretty much its entire range here. Yeah, I mean, Airball still probably has many ace highs and flush draws and things of that kind. He kind of blasts it, I think. No, he bets 60 and 86. It's a bit strange. It's very hard, by the way, guys, to have a full house here. If you guys have ever played poker before, you may have discovered that. Now, Airball doesn't think too long. He just blasts in a raise. Clear sign of a full house. So he makes it 230K. Interesting spot. One thing that would be useful to think about is what the thought process would be, or whatever you want to call it, to immediately raise with this kind of size. It's going to vary per person. One factor to consider is that Airballs play lots of poker, and so he may have an idea of what to do with a lot of different hands in the spot, but it is quite a weird spot, so it's going to be less true in this spot. We really should... This is where live tells come into play, but it's hard to make them work because you really have to put yourself and the mind of the other person to consider all details versus just like, oh, they did something fast, therefore they're weak or strong or whatever. There's a lot of things that go into play, and this is where really paying attention to the meta-analysis comes in hand. And there are a few consistent patterns that occur, especially in how leveling works out, where you can accurately read people. This is something of what I do. I may make a course on this, but for now, yeah, the timing matters a lot based on how people based on the timing people usually have, whether they take slow times or not. What has happened in the past, like maybe Nick Airball thinks Keating has a read on him about fast timing. All these things kind of matter a lot. And it's very, very hard to play perfectly balanced with perfect timing unless basically you neutralize everything, which is the approach of the Triton pros a lot of the time. And these tournament players, they play slow, so it's very hard to get these kinds of reads. And that's a solid strategy because it's very hard to read through that. And so Keating calls. Airball's hand to raise is not really that good because he hopes that Keating has a draw. You want to not have the diamonds to be bluffing, particularly the river on the turn. Well, even on the turn, you don't really want them because you hope that Keating just has like... There's a really high chance Keating's hand actually is like diamond plus. And we can take a look in GTO Wizard to see how often really he's got some flush draws on the turn. That would be an interesting exercise. So... yeah, he would actually prefer something like 6-5 of spades that doesn't block Keating's check raises a lot of the time. It doesn't really matter that much if we're really talking about how people play in these hood games where theory is kind of thrown out the window. But yeah, he's not loving life once it gets called. This is a trouble situation. Having a big draw helps, but only on the turn. It does not help on the river when he inevitably misses. Another thing is, I don't think Airball has to have a full house here, especially if he happens to know how Keating plays his ranges on the turn. Like maybe Keating just traps full houses and things of this kind. So if Airball knows that, he can now raise really thin on the turn versus a bet. He can raise as thin as, pocket 9s or pocket 10s would be an appropriate raise because there's a really high chance that this guy just has like pair plus draw or a draw. If, like, especially he starts doing something different with full houses, which are rare in the first place. Maybe Keating has, like, pocket 9s. Maybe he's got, like, ace-8 with no diamond. That's also realistic. So, theoretically, Airball could have a lot of these things. Now, unfortunately, Airball's gotten the situation where it's going to be hard to just blast off with, like, pocket jacks on this ace river where he's a bit worried that Keating might have, like, ace-5 of diamonds or something, or ace-8. So now he's going to polarize himself massively by betting. On the turn, he could have had all kinds of things, but, you know, on the river when he blasts, he doesn't necessarily have to have a full house precisely. I guess he could have, like, king 3 suited or ace-8. He could have ace-8. That's actually a realistic thing. He has to worry that Keating check raises a 3 or that kind of thing. That could happen. Maybe Keating's that kind of player. Anyway, so let's look at the timing a little bit. He doesn't think too long, and he blasted out there, bets 525. He bets about pot size. Yeah, pot size bet. Okay, so pot size bet is really polarizing. He's basically saying, he could be saying he's got ace-8. That's a possibility. Or king 3. It's not so crazy, but it's rare that he would have. He is kind of. There's a good chance he has a set when he does things like that, and it is going for value. If you count combinatorically, there are only 2 combos of king 3 suited. I guess they could have ace 3 suited. There's only 1 combination of those. Ace 8. I don't know if he plays ace 8 offsuit. That's if he does, then it's 3 times 3. That's would be 9 combinations. If he plays only suit combinations, that's 2. If you count the sets, quads is 1. A set of 4s is 3. Set of 8s is 3 also. So, but there's a lot taken away. That takes away the fact that Keating has 8 or 4. Takes away 4 of the combinations of sets, like over half of the sets. Now, like basically, Airball has to have these perfect combinations, or theoretically aces. He could have aces full. It's a bit more realistic. So he's going to have some things here. Now, it really becomes a question of what the fuck does Airball actually have and do this with. A big factor to consider is what kind of bluffs he would be willing to pull. What partly makes this such a sick call is if Airball doesn't run that many crazy bluffs. But I've seen Airball do some things. That's one of the biggest factors that Keating has to think about. Other than that, it's fucking hard to have it here, to be honest. Speed it up a little bit, gives him the stare, looks over at the chips, looks over at the pot, looks over the money.
At this big on the river.
The flop, I guess. Trying to figure out what the fuck this guy's got.
It's still really hard to call here with a hand this weak. Huge spot here.
These chips around for some reason. An important thing about the live reads is that it's really important to figure out when someone is aware of what they're doing and when they're not aware of what they're doing. When someone's kind of sitting there and not doing something, it's generally a bit hard to get a read on them unless they're very different when they do have it. They have to be, in that particular situation, they have to be unaware of when they do have it and then give something off, ironically in that case, so that they act differently. Yeah, they kind of have to give something off in the case where they do have it for you to be able to read them when they don't. Or you had to pay attention for when he was betting in the first place, or his timing in the first place. Basically, some other part of the hand where he's like less cognizant of his overall behavior. So it's kind of too late at this point to get much of a read.
You like bluff? Nothing makes sense? Nothing makes sense?
Not much.
Keating says nothing makes sense. Airball realizes he's fucked.
Maybe some king pre-suited.
Ace 3 clubs? That wouldn't be a bluff.
So Keating clearly knows about some combinations over here. He's got some thought processes.
How many 3x hands? Airball raises it.
Doesn't reveal a whole lot about what he knows of the game. The funny thing is, he's got as many ace 3 of clubs as he does full houses and quads. That's one subtle thing here, is that one combination 4-4-4, one combination 8-8-8, one combination 3-3, 4-3.
Ace by itself, not much of a factor because Airball raised on the turn and now is betting very big on the river. He's not really saying he has an ace.
Yeah, let's fast forward. We're going to speed it up.
He's ace and 4's better with an ace.
Okay, he did call.
Ace and 4's better with an ace. For Keating, incredible hero call, and the biggest part of the night, 1.6 million.
Would have been a great
his way.
needle opportunity. Keating was that kind of guy. Or excuse me, it looks like Airball didn't pay attention to the hand before when Keating called with absurd action versus a bunch of other lines, and someone tried to wrap like one of the 4 combinations, and he did his call for infinite money. Should have done his homework. That's what you get for having an airball against Mr. Keating.
What did you pick up on? What were you thinking? Did you pick up any tells? Anything on his bet size?
I was watching everything. There's hands he can be bluffing with, and he could easily have me beat. I could be down $1 million right now, or more. But the tricky part with Airball is he doesn't bluff a lot, not big numbers. It's something that I said at the table a couple times in an hour. So.
Okay, so Keating did mention a couple times that Airball hasn't run many bluffs. Now, one important thing to mention is there's loads of people out there who you'll say to their face, "Oh, you're not the kind of guy to bluff. You don't bluff that much." Blah blah blah, and then they'll never ever change. Airball happens to be the kind of guy that makes these kinds of big changes in how he does things. A lot of people don't make any fucking changes. I even wonder what's going on with these people, but okay. If they're not going to make any changes and they just don't bluff, then you always fold to them. That's how you play poker. The Airball's not one of those guys.
I think I planted this seed in his head where it became somewhat of a challenge. This hand came out where I didn't have a great hand by the river. I mean, even like a ace high that was bluffing beats me.
Bluff catcher at best.
Yeah. But knowing that it was kind of set up that way where he knew that I didn't want to call him and give him, $500,000 when he's got a big hand, it flipped the dynamic where I think he took it as a challenge. And so I just kind of whipped him down and made a get.
So, what Keating says happens to be true. It looks like it's true. I just want to mention there's loads of times where people can hang themselves thinking people think various other things, and what actually is happening is they're projecting their thought process. But one important factor here is Keating had a perfect hand to call him down with, and Airball was not repping much at all. So it can appear that you can go into a match thinking that, okay, you planted the seed and now someone's like making this U-turn in their mind. And that's why I mentioned there's loads of cases where people don't make that U-turn or just fucking have it. And I've made similar mistakes myself, by the way. Yeah, you really have to look at the whole picture as a big point and not get too carried away with what actually happens. If you want to be good at poker anyway, if you want to actually win money, that's important. If you want to like feel good about your decisions, then okay, then gaslight yourself to all eternity. But Mr. Keating, I think, really did make the right read here and just made the right decision based off all the information. I don't think that he was projecting any thought processes. I think he just really had enough understanding of the game or enough intuition to know roughly what to do. And good job, Mr. Keating.
And just like with you and Peter, that's one of the big things in poker is people, their egos, it's the challenge. They want to outdo, they want to outplay their opponents. And I feel like you are really good at getting your opponents to do that because you challenge them too. So now moving forward, do you think Airball is going to be tilted? What's the dynamic going to be like from him?
That's up to him. You know, he's a tremendous player, so he knows exactly how to respond in a situation when you take a big hit like that. I don't expect him to be out of control, but it's not just him. The whole table changed when you start making huge pots like that. So who's next? I don't know.
So I had some things to say about that. Actually, people are very predictable after the spot. The situation, people quote unquote know what to do after hanging themselves for shitloads of money, but it varies a lot on if they're backed by their money, if it's a big pot for them. Yeah, you could say emotionally a lot of things have changed, but it doesn't necessarily matter. You could still play like your GTO kind of game if that's what you're doing, or you could still find exploits in the psychology of how people think, and there are certainly some exploits, such as perhaps Alan doesn't expect Nick Airball to blast off 2 hands later against him in a very similar spot or another kind of spot, and that can matter a lot. Or maybe he's the kind of guy that just loses his mind. It really depends a little bit on the person. And yeah, I said that people know what to do in this spot a lot of the time. I have to put quotations around know what to do. I think they do something and it may feel as though they know what to do, and actually they do not exploit the situation, the psychologist situation. It's not an easy thing to do, and they usually, when the pressure is very high, fall into various patterns of doing things or lose their mind and go crazy. Some people do that, but usually most professionals keep their shit together. Actually, I would guess that Airball is a little rattled there. I don't know if he I'd have to watch more of the session to see how he played after, but it's hard to play well after that stuff happens. That's one of the challenges of poker. And it's also, well, how do you play? Is Alan Keating now going to start calling him more because he called in that one spot, or is he not? Has Alan Keating's perception of Airball's play changed that much? I mean, that's supposed to be top level stuff, but if the players at the $1 million game were top level, then you'd really see, if you paid close attention to all things that they do, to see if they really are. But maybe they probably are pretty good, at least for large amounts of money, I should say. Dealing a large amount of money, they're also quite rich. So yeah, those are some important things to consider. Now let's take a look at what GTO Wizard has to say. All right, guys, let's get into it. So I've started off making them 800 big blinds deep, which was definitely create some interesting dynamics. If you really look at the theory, I put Keating in the straddle as an approximation for a structure where there's a straddle, there's a big blind and an ante, which is what it is. He actually calls in the big blinds, so this call is way looser. And as you can see, he's playing loose as shit. Alan is playing lots of hands, man. So this is basically how loose he should be playing in order for 8-4 offsuit to get in there. I'm sure that he's folding some Jack-3 off and these pieces of shit over here, but they're apparently not that different from, maybe even a little better than 8-4 off in actuality. But yeah, his range looks something like that. I don't think it matters really that much other than it changes the theory just a little bit. There's going to be some immediate changes to theory. So it turned out that when I was looking at this a little bit shallower, like 400 big blinds deep, it actually preferred 2/3 size. It looked like in this case, it preferred 40% for some reason, but all those are kind of acceptable if you have a rough idea what people are doing. And what really matters more is the overarching theory. So we're going to blast a lot as a low jack, because guess what? Our boy is playing 8-4 offsuit in the big blind, and we don't give a fuck. We got like all the pocket pairs and all that if we're at Nick Airball. And so we should be betting really often. What Nick Airball also happens to do is slightly worse, but it's not so bad. I don't think it really matters that much. He bets about 35%. Oh, wait, no. He bets... I fucked it up. Yeah, he bets 6.6 roughly, which is okay. The machine is going to bet every single hand at 6.6 here because we're playing against some Queen 2 offsuit, and who knows what else this guy's got. So low jack, which is what Airball is. This is an 8-handed table, by the way. Is going to bet 6.6, and so machine actually does like to check raise small. Sometimes. I believe the reason is because we're betting pure range as Airball. This will be Keating's spot. And there's probably just lots of hands that just have to fold a lot and just don't do too well. It's got some 8s in there, some sets and all that. Not all hands are fast played, by the way, guys. It doesn't have pocket 9s. It's got a couple of those. But what Keating actually does is he makes it about pot size, maybe slightly bigger than pot size. He does not make it cheap, which 8-4 offsuit's not universally in that, by the way. Does like to have sets. Doesn't always pick 8-4 offsuit, but whatever, it doesn't matter. But it gets in there. So Keating's kind of in the reasonable range. Airball calls, of course he does. He's got 6-5 of diamonds. We're gonna have to node lock. To give Airball 6-5 of diamonds. Whoa. This is all we really need, to be honest. We just need to do this. I mean, you could open 6-5 of diamonds under the gun. That's really not a big deal. It's probably even good because a lot of people should be like some tiny equity difference. Yep, it likes that size. Nope, we're going 6.6. And by the way, Josh, you can just edit through this really fast. So, because people not really want to watch this too much, this part of me going through everything again. All right. Call. The turn is the 3 of hearts. Now what the fuck do we do with our 8-4 if we're Alan Keating? So what Alan Keating actually does isn't that crazy. The machine actually likes to overbet here, probably because it's just really hard to have a full house and it's really hard to have a lot of things. The machine... would not have had 9s, but if it had 10s, it does not really like this play if we start doing that. Anyway, why don't we take a look at what he actually does, which is about half the size, about 70. That's 70% roughly. And machine still likes to bet pretty often. It still thinks check is better with 10s. It probably doesn't like to do it too much even with his 8-8 type things. No, it likes to split a little bit with ace-8. With 8-4, it's also a mix. Anyway, he bets. It doesn't also do this all the time with full houses, too, by the way. So, of course, versus this, Airball is not really supposed to raise much. It's supposed to fold a lot of flush draws, as a matter of fact. Even, like, ace-6 is not looking too hot, but we're going to put in a raise to 4x. The stack sizes actually work out pretty well because there's in fact exactly 100k in the pot at this point. So I'm gonna make it exactly. No, I made it. He makes it about 4x's size, so I should have made it 240 actually. No, it's 4 times 7. Oh, 280. That's about what he did. Okay. The math works out fine because the proportions of the pot are the same. Anyway, so we're going to force Airball to raise to 280. Let's see what hands... Machine vetoes the play. Well, sorry, Machine, but we got to do this. Yeah, the Machine's like... So what I'm going to do is I'm going to node lock. I'm going to say, actually, we're going to give him like 10%. I'm going to give him some 10%. No, I'm gonna give him 8% raise overall. And 6-5 suited is gonna make it into the cut. 100%. This one specific combo. Yeah. It even has mostly value hands. Somehow Machine is just having an aneurysm. Let's see if we can get some more bluffs in there. Let's see if we can. Machine's not really having it. All right, Machine's finding some bluffs. We also have the 6-5 of diamonds. No, not all of them. Let's say we got these two. Fine, whatever. Half the combos. Let's see what happens now. No lock. Might need a lock ranges. All right. Well, what I did worked. Lock all. All right, we're locked in. We're locked in, ladies and gentlemen. We're raising. What's the Machine gonna do? Machine is actually going all in with ace 4, 8-4. This things like calling is not so great. Likes to go all in. Interesting. The Machine says fuck that and decides to move in. Doesn't call. Machine also says with his 8-2 of diamonds, it's going all in. Yeah, these things make these sim situations not ideal. No. River's an ace, there's a call. Could force a no lock call. Now it's getting really weird. It wants to jam all in. Yeah, the Machine's having an aneurysm, and apparently stacks aren't 100% right, but whatever. No lock instead of all in. Okay, so it does. We're gonna pretend it's not gonna go all in. It's just gonna call in place of going all in. So actually, 8-4 is supposed to be folded a fair bit. The Machine seems to believe that. Yeah. Machine seems to believe it's on the borderline. I guess if he was playing perfect. Although it's saying call with 7-5, what the fuck? That's so strange. Anyway, the Machine seems to view Alan's play as acceptable. The river's the ace. We can say the ace of spades. Pot now it's not quite right. Actually, I didn't line up, so it's a perfect shove on the river. But in any case, here we would be, and low jack would not shove any bluffs actually. Not 6-5 suited or any such thing. Yeah, with the way this played out, basically, the Machine's having an aneurysm and is saying that this is a wildly minus EV spot for Nick Airball, and that if for whatever reason it decided to raise and do all these crazy things, it would not jam the bluff on the river. It believes, believes that jamming is quite a bit worse than checking, at least for this stack size, which is like, it's like 60%. If we were to make it bigger, we can make the raise size smaller on the turn without editing everything all over. Make it something like 210. Let's see what happens then. Hypothesizing hero folds. Yeah, hypothesizing is an accurate assessment. All right, so we're gonna have to go into the no lock. We're gonna say there is actually a 10% raise percentage, and it does include 6-5, which the Machine does not like the 6-5, ladies and gentlemen. Let it be known. Whatever, I'll give him 3 combos. Fuck it. I do not think he's got 3 combos, actually. But whatever. Lock all. We're here. Yeah, it doesn't seem to like many bluffs either. Even though I'm trying to, like, make this work somehow. Basically, Machine's not loving it. Machine's not loving the raise. It thinks it's silly. It also doesn't want to like just call against the raise. Have to do this. Take away all the raises, all the re-raises all in. Says Keating's just supposed to say fuck you and jam all in a lot of the time with 80% of the range. So Machine just says, nope, we're still playing back. One strange thing is the Machine doesn't want to fold anything. I think the idea the Machine has, no joke, is to like hood Nick Airball on the river by like leading the river. I think that's what's going on here. I think that's its justification. It's basically saying Nick Airball's range for raising just can't make any sense. It's going to like jam all in a lot of rivers. I think that's what's going on here. Just as a control, let's put the river as like the jack of clubs and let's see what happens. Yeah, sure enough, that is exactly what happened. So basically the Machine is saying, no, this raise thing is bullshit, and it's just going to go all in with a bunch of stuff because it just has the nuts so much when it bets. So there shouldn't be any raise from Airball because Keating's range, in theory, is supposed to be very strong, is what's going on here. And that is also the justification for why the Machine shuts down with Airball's bluffs after raising the turn. That just basically doesn't bluff the river if there's a call, man. It's why it's just not having this at all. But just in case, we can check, we can no-lock this, we can say, no, we're not going all in before Airball does, as Keating. Lock. No, we're not betting. That's all nonsense. I'm having a fight with GTO Wizard. Alright, whatever. I don't need to show it. Case closed, everyone. The Machine is not loving it. Machine says Airball is crazy, and apparently Mr. Keating's a genius. Sorry, Airball. And that we're not supposed to be raising the turn here, or else you get jammed in your face on the river anyway, or you just get called by 8-4, and then life sucks. So that's all I've got to say here. That's what the Wizard says here. And if you guys like what I'm doing, subscribe. Click the link below. If you want to get rich, join the Jungleverse. That's where getting rich is happening and more. And that's my community that I'm helping you guys get rich and get fit. And if you guys are trying to learn how to play poker and not suck, download GTO Wizard and run some sims. Getting good at poker, like getting big in the gym, you gotta hit the sims. You gotta hit the gym to get big. You gotta hit the sims to get big in poker. And that's about it. Thanks for watching, guys. See you guys later.